Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a reading recap for December 2023. If you're interested in seeing what books I read last month, please stick around. Before we dive into the December 2023 reading recap, I just wanted to say that I am not home alone as I'm filming this. I usually try to be because I hate filming with other people around, but I am not alone. So I am using a mic to try and cut down on the background noise. If there is some background noise, I apologize. If the volume is a little wonky, I apologize. I'm going to try to fix it up as best I can. Also, welcome to day 975 of dreary weather. In Connecticut, I feel like we haven't had a sunny day in weeks. Every single time I try to film a video, it is cloudy out, and today is no different. I'm actually filming this on January 1st, New Year's Day, and yeah, it's dreary. But let's dive into my December 2023 reading wrap-up. I had such a great reading month. I was not going into this month expecting a lot, but I was pleasantly surprised, and I'm super excited to talk about the books that I read this month. As usual, I will be referencing my Archer and Olive Amy Tangerine reading journal. This is where I keep track of all of the books that I read, so I will be referencing this when I give you all my ratings and everything for the books that I read this month. I decided to start out December 2023 with a holiday romance, and that book is Along Came Holly by Codi Hall. I have not read anything by Codi Hall before, so I was excited to dive into this. I actually got this as an ARC months ago, but didn't want to read any holiday romances until December. So I picked this one up. I enjoyed this. It wasn't super holiday. I mean, there was a big plot point that was like holiday related, but it didn't feel like the holiday aspect was overtaking the story, which I've found I like. I didn't necessarily vibe with the like enemies to lovers style trope in here. It didn't seem very realistic. They didn't really seem to have a reason to not like each other. Like, it just seemed like that trope was added to just be there instead of it being two people who just like hadn't really gotten to know each other, not necessarily being enemies. So overall for me, this was just kind of middle of the road. This was 3 out of 5 stars for me. The next book that I read was actually a book of poetry. Every month of 2023, I have read a book of poetry, and for December, that was Artemis Made Me Do It by Trista. This is my 3rd Trista book. She has this series, I think it's called Myths and Magic or something like that, and I read the first one, Aphrodite Made Me Do It, and then I got the 3rd one, Persephone Made Me Do It, as an ARC, and enjoyed both of them, and so I decided to go back and pick up the 2nd one, which is Artemis Made Me Do It. Definitely liked this one. Wasn't my favorite of the 3 that I've read, but there was certainly some good poems in here, and also she always has a lot of really interesting artwork that incorporates poetry into it, so I love that about her poetry collections. Definitely had a few poems that I ended up tabbing. I don't know if you can see that. So yeah, I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that we're going to talk about is one that I do have the physical copy of, but I actually read it digitally, so I didn't bother to pull it out, and that is Ruthless by Elsie. This is the 4th book in the Chestnut Spring series. I've read the first 3 this year. I read Powerless a few months back. I didn't love it, actually, which was pretty disappointing, so I gave myself a little bit of a time away from the series and then decided to pick up Reckless this month, and I am so glad that I did. I absolutely loved this book. It is hands down my favorite book in the series. I wasn't expecting to like it as much as I did because I did know going in that it was accidental pregnancy, and I don't really feel like that's a trope that I would really enjoy. I haven't really read anything in that trope before, but I just didn't think I was going to like it, and I ended up really, really liking it. I love the way that Elsie Silver did the accidental pregnancy. I loved the male main character. I really liked the female lead as well. Everything about this book just worked for me. Worked on so many different levels. I highly recommend this one. It was 5 out of 5 stars for me, hands down. The next book that I read in December, I received as an ARC on NetGalley, and that is Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I had heard about this book, but I didn't really know much about it. I did know that at least one of the characters was a serial killer, which certainly seemed interesting to me, knowing that it was a romance. It is, I guess, a dark romance in a sense. There's definitely some touchy things that are talked about. Our main characters are both serial killers. They are serial killers that kill bad people. I I found this book to be so, so funny, and I definitely wasn't expecting that. The humor was fantastic in here. I loved the connection between our two main characters. I liked how the author really took her time building that relationship, building that bond over the course of years within the story, and it just made the romance pay off so, so great. I loved this. I know that it's becoming a series. I cannot wait until the second book in the series. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. After reading Butcher and Blackbird, I felt very compelled to dive back in and finish off the Chestnut Spring series, so I ended up picking up Hopeless. I again have this physically, but I read it digitally on my Kindle. I have heard a lot of people say that they're disappointed with this book, that it wasn't what they were expecting, it didn't live up to their expectations. I will say I was definitely very intrigued by Beau as a character before reading this book, but I don't know that I necessarily had any expectations about what I thought the story was going to be. If anything, I actually didn't think I was going to like it a lot because I did know it was an age gap romance, and I am not a big fan of age gap romances, especially when the younger character is very young, and especially when it is a male character that is the older character. And I will say that I was pleasantly surprised by how much I liked this story. I liked that Elsie Silver dove into the depression and anxiety and PTSD that our male main character is dealing with. I like that she dove into the really difficult family dynamics of our female main character. I liked the inexperience of our female main character. I liked the way that their relationship built together. And overall, I ended up really, really enjoying this. I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I'd say it's my second favorite in the Chestnut Spring series. I'm super happy to have read my favorite two right at the end of the series. Next, I read a book that I was super, super excited about. Sorry, I have my Crocs on if you can hear them. But I read a book that I was super, super excited about. I actually didn't realize it was coming out in December. I thought it was coming out in 2024. So when I saw people posting about it, I was beyond excited. And that is Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman. I love Heartstopper. I love the graphic novels. I love the show on Netflix. And getting more of these characters is definitely really exciting for me. The timeline of Heartstopper is a little off because there are two novellas. I've read both of them. I read one of them, I think, in November, and then the other one I read a while back. And actually, this graphic novel takes place before that other novella, which I didn't realize at first. So I got kind of confused with regards to the timeline. But fortunately, Alice Oseman actually puts a calendar in the back, like a timeline calendar in the back of when each volume takes place and when the novellas take place. So that helped to clarify the storyline, the timeline a lot for me. I really, really enjoyed this. This is one of my favorite installments of this series. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. And at the end, we end up finding out that Alice Oseman is actually going to be writing a volume 6. She is ending off the graphic novel series with a volume 6, which was very unexpected and very exciting. Cannot wait for that. Next, we have my Instagram challenge book for December 2023. I'm going to try to find my Instagram challenge in here. That way I can share with you all who recommended this to me. because I'm so happy that they did. So the person who recommended this to me was at KimLyn18, and they recommended Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a book that has caught my eye, that has piqued my curiosity, but I just didn't know when I was going to get around to reading it. And so having it recommended for my Instagram challenge was great. I've heard this described as a cozy mystery. Nope, that's a lie. Cozy fantasy. I've never read a cozy fantasy before, so I was really excited to try something out in that subgenre of fantasy. And I ended up really enjoying this. It was so much fun. Sometimes people find cozy fantasy to be kind of boring. I didn't feel that way. I really enjoyed the storyline of our main character. I liked the hint of romance that was in here. I loved the found family aspect to this story, and I ended up rating this 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that we're going to talk about is one that I read on my Kindle. This is on Kindle Unlimited, and that is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young. I have heard such great things about this book that when I was in the mood for a romance, I decided that it would be a good one to check out, and I definitely was not disappointed. I thought that this story was so incredibly romantic in such wonderful ways, quiet ways that I think sometimes are not what's focused on in romance stories. It is another accidental pregnancy, which again does not seem like a trope that I would really be into, but I loved Ruthless and I loved this book as well, so maybe I am kind of into that trope. I don't know. But I really loved the development of the relationship between our male and female leads in this book. I just love the supportiveness of the male main character. I loved the development of their friendship. I loved the way time was taken in stepping into a romantic relationship. I loved so much about this story, and I ended up rating it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that we're going to talk about is the mystery thriller book that I read in December 2023. Each month of the year, I have been reading a mystery thriller book, and my book for December was Not So Perfect Strangers by L.S. Stratton. This is one that I just randomly saw at the bookstore and picked up because I really liked the cover. I liked the lime green on the dark image. I didn't know what it was about at all. It ended up being a very interesting story, not at all what I was expecting. It really showed like the depth of narcissism and self-victimization in a really interesting way. I didn't love it, I'll say that, but I didn't dislike it. It definitely kept my attention. I definitely wanted to know what was going to happen, and I ended up giving this 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was an ARC that I received. I was able to request it on NetGalley, and I actually did that intentionally because I wanted the digital copy of it to read it digitally, even though I did receive the physical copy from Bramble. So thank you to Bramble for sending me this. And that is Remedial Magic by Melissa Marr. This comes out in February, I think February 6th, 2024. If that's incorrect, I'll put it down here. But this is a fantasy with romance. I didn't know what this was going to be about, and it ended up being a really unique and interesting story, I think. There's again some romance in here. That was probably, to me, the weakest part of the story. It definitely ends off on a really interesting note, and I would be interested in continuing on with the series to figure out what happens. This is going to be part of the A Course in Magic series, so I ended up giving this 3 out of 5 stars, but again, I didn't dislike it, and I definitely would continue with the series. Next, I ended up listening to an audiobook, and that book is Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I have heard really great things about this book. I knew that it was kind of mystery thriller, but I didn't really know exactly what it involved. It's told in a really interesting way. There's multiple timelines going on. There's multiple character perspectives happening. We are dealing with a college setting in the 1970s. We're dealing with present day. It was really interesting to hear about how the villain of the story was being talked about in the media and how that was playing into him being convicted of the crimes that he committed. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. The next book that I ended up picking up was another holiday romance. I read this on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, actually, and that is Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. What I will say is that I didn't hate this book. I don't think it's a bad book, but I also didn't find it to be special or exciting in any way. It wasn't super holiday-esque, which I'm finding that I like in holiday romance. I like when it's not just 24/7 focused on the holiday, but it seemed almost kind of like insta-lovey, like they had these strong feelings and emotions towards each other, and it wasn't really earned in any way because they didn't really know each other. They just knew of each other, of each other's personas, that kind of a vibe. It was just kind of a middle of the road read for me. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, and honestly, I feel like maybe Tessa Bailey just isn't the author for me, so I don't foresee myself jumping to pick up another one of her books anytime soon. The next book that I read is a new release, one that I have been very, very excited about. I read Divine Rivals earlier this year and absolutely loved it. It was a 5-star read for me. So I picked up Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross the day it came out, the day after Christmas, and started it right away. And I absolutely loved this book. I just feel like it is such a sweet, wholesome, sincere romance. And we definitely dove a little bit more into the fantasy, and I could definitely see people thinking that there was too much focus on that and not enough focus on the romance, but I feel like this story needed to allow our female main character to come into herself and come into her power. And I think it did a really good job of that. I think that it also did a really great job of making that romance still seem believable, even though our characters were being separated from each other. I think that the moments they had together were so romantic and so sweet. And I just really, really loved this and gave it 5 out of 5 stars as well. The next book that I read was an ARC that I received through NetGalley, but this book actually came out a while ago, and that is Prince of Never by Lorelei Johnson and Hailey Jade. I read the synopsis to this and I felt like I needed it in my life. I wanted to read it, and I had been fortunate enough to receive the ARC digitally, but then just hadn't gotten around to reading it. And I have to say, unfortunately, getting around to reading it ended up being really disappointing for me. It is a fae-based story. We're in a fae realm. It's enemies to lovers, it's fated mates, there's prophecy and all of that. I felt like it wasn't terrible with regards to building the Fae world. It wasn't terrible with regards to letting us know that this prophecy existed and this is where our conflict came from. But I just felt like the romance was completely unbelievable. I didn't think it made sense. I didn't care about it, and because of that I ended up rating this 2.5 out of 5 stars. It is the first book in a series, and I don't see myself continuing with the series after this one. And because that ended up being a bit of a bummer for me, I ended up picking up something else because, again, I just felt like I needed something else. I didn't want to end off the year on a 2.5 out of 5 star read. So the easiest and quickest thing for me to pick up and get through is a book of poetry. So I ended up picking up Love Her Wild by Atticus, and I'm so glad that I did. Atticus is a repeat poet for me. Him and Trista are the poets that I have read multiple books of poetry from this year. I really enjoyed the other 2 books of poetry that I've read by him. I was excited to pick up this one, and it's separated into 3 sections: love, her, and wild. I really liked the love section. I really loved the her section. The wild section to me was a little bit weaker, but overall I did really think that it was a great book of poetry. I definitely tabbed quite a few poems in here, and did really enjoy my experience with this. And I do have another book of poetry from Atticus that I am intending on reading in 2024, and will definitely pick up any new releases from this poet. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars. And that is it for my reading recap for December 2023. It was a great reading month. Again, I had several 5-star reads. I had a few 4.5 stars, a few 4 stars. So I'm really not mad at all about the way that my year ended off with regards to reading. I feel like ending off on a high note with a 4 out of 5-star read was the best thing for me, and it's making me very excited to pick up new books and read new things in 2024. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you've read any of the books that I talked about in here and want to give me your spoiler-free thoughts, please leave them down below in the comment section. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.